Tomorrow marks 58 years since Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared his dream at the March on Washington in one of the most famous speeches in American history. But as the unrest of the 1960s unfolded, he said his dream became a nightmare, and the nation was divided into what King later called two Americas. 10 Tampa Bay's Emerald Morrow takes a deeper dive into one of his lesser-known speeches and how those words still impact us today.
We must work with determination to solve the problems that exist in all of our communities.
The year was 1968. Dr. King was nearing his death.
We must not let up one iota.
Here, he was helping black sanitation workers fight for union rights. The move represented King's evolving views he outlined in a speech called The Other America.
The American Negro finds himself living in a triple ghetto. A ghetto of race, a ghetto of poverty, a ghetto of human misery.
In the speech, Dr. King made a bold claim, not just that racism existed, but that America as a whole was a racist country. A country split in two, one filled with hope, the other deep in despair.
We shall overcome.
When black Americans march for freedom to the tune of this old Negro spiritual, what is it they seek to overcome? And what holds them back?
Every major institution you can point your finger to has been touched by institutional racism.
In this other America, King speaks of racism, unemployment, segregation, poverty, and police brutality plague the black community. These forces sparked deadly race riots across the nation, but he wanted America to, quote, see that riots do not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. And as protests over racial inequality swept the nation after George Floyd's death, for many, King's words still rang true.
He talks about discrepancies with education and economics and housing, but he really paints the situation of blacks in America as one that has been mired with inequality and injustice.
By 1967, King was at a turning point in his life, and he considered his 1963 dream a nightmare.
There were a lot of white liberals at the time that were with him in the fight against legalized racism, but that a lot of that dropped off whenever they kept trying to push forward to get true equality.
Because as he left the Jim Crow segregation of the South, he found violent resistance to social and economic equality as he moved north. He said, quote, "There has never been a single, solid, monistic, determined commitment on the part of the vast majority of white Americans on the whole question of civil rights."
The people that were brought to this nation in chains, we see statistically that those people who were brought to be at the bottom are still at the bottom.
He wanted America to address the fractures in the foundation of our nation, fractures that start at birth, where black babies are twice as likely to die as white ones. Those differences continue in education, where black children are 5 times more likely to attend segregated, low-performing schools. They're less likely to graduate, and even with a college degree, often end up making less. That widens the wealth gap, where white families have 10 times the net worth of black ones, leaving African Americans less likely to own a home and build generational wealth. These disparities persist to life's very end, where segregation endured in death. And to this day, across the country, and even in the Tampa Bay area, archaeologists are finding hundreds of graves from destroyed black cemeteries, under apartments, and even on school grounds.
It might not directly be legalized racism like it was in the past, but there's been systems that have been created that lead to inequality in many different areas.
He also reminded his audience that, quote, "No other racial group has been a slave on American soil," end quote, then left without meaningful support after freedom.
It is a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps.
The vast majority of black people still live in an America that does not match up to the America that their white counterparts live in.
So, for America to live up to her name, King said it is necessary for us to realize more than ever before that the destinies of the Negro and the white man are tied together.
We've got to tell the truth about racism, about systemic injustice, and then we can come together as a nation. Because black people aren't, for the most part, we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here in this country. And so we got to figure out a way to live together.
And while these fractures have caused so much pain, there is hope we can heal if we work together toward justice.
So, in the words of Dr. King, we shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice.
Yes, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.